Welcome to Indie Film Podcast. I'm Victoria.
And I am Chuck. We are two independent filmmakers that wanted to start this podcast to share our filmmaking mistakes so that you can avoid them.
So follow along on our journey to slowly make incremental improvements to our IMDb profiles.
One step at a time.
One little credit.
Yes, we are talking about fixing it in post this month.
Yeah, it's already March.
Yes,
it's
third
March.
Month. We all got new shirts on. So
that's what you can tell.
March, we're going with blue. That's our theme. And fixing it in post is the filmmaking theme.
And this week's episode is cutting catastrophes.
Yes. Have you had any issues in editing your films that you've made, Victoria?
I could speak for hours and hours on the editing mistakes that I have made.
Well,
I will
let's
not.
do it. I got hours. Hopefully everybody who's listening does too.
Buckle up, Buttercup. We're going for a long ride. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
If you want to go back to our previous episodes, in January, we talked about pre-production, pitfalls. Last month was
Perils of production.
And now we're talking about fix it in post. We couldn't come up with another alliterative post theme because that was just so many P's. There's just way too many P's.
Editing edifications?
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess we did have cutting catastrophes. But
oh, yeah. See, look, we can still alliterate. We like puns.
We're doing all right.
Wordplay is fun.
Yeah, editing is an interesting process because the way I think about it is, are you familiar with Johari's Window?
That's the... No, that's not the knowns and unknowns. Or yeah, it is. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so there's yourself and others, and I think of it as like you as a filmmaker and your crew. You have your known knowns, things that you can do, and then maybe you have some things that you know how to do, but people in your crew, they're unknown, so you can teach them. And then there's the unknowns.
And those are scarier.
That crop up. And you find out what those are when you start to edit your film.
Yeah.
You see, oh man, I really messed that up. I did not notice what was going on. I broke the 180-degree rule while I was filming a scene.
Or even something that made perfect sense in the script. Now that you're seeing it play out, it actually doesn't make any sense at all. And we need to cut around this in a very different way.
Yes. And when you sit down on your editing station and look at the footage and try to follow the script, so many times it just doesn't work the way that you think it's going to work.
No.
So when have you relied on editing to save one of your projects?
I actually have two examples for this. One where it was very intentional.
Okay.
And one where it was just very necessary.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the intentional one.
Okay, I think the intentional one was what's the worst that could happen.
Okay.
I specifically shot that one for the edit. I knew I wanted a lot of split screen. I wanted horizontal and vertical split screen. I wanted to see the two characters as they're having this conversation over the phone in different rooms as they're sort of walking away from each other or walking toward each other. So all the blocking was very specific. When they both lie down, their feet and heads had to be at opposite sides because I wanted to go into a vertical or I guess horizontal split screen where one's on top and one's on bottom. So there was a lot of very intentional shooting because I knew what I wanted the edit to be.
Yeah, and you cut that one together, so anyone who hasn't seen the film, it's not out streaming yet.
It's not out streaming yet.
I'm sure it will be.
It's been over a year and it's still not out streaming yet. I'm so sorry.
Festival runs thing, you gotta wait.
They take a while.
Yes, they do.
They
it's
do.
painfully slow. But that one was interesting because you had two people in two different locations and they were having a phone conversation and somehow you made it come together to where they were talking at the same time without having to cut between the split screen. So it was they were having a phone conversation.
They were. I got lucky and just had really talented actors. That helps.
So that's the only advice you have there.
That's my only advice. Just work with
What if it wouldn't have lined
timing. It was timing and it was practice.
Okay.
And there was a little bit of buffer, and it did help that the first scenes we shot, the first half of that phone conversation, one of the actresses is on camera, the other actress is on the phone, but she was in the room, so we had her audio.
Okay.
And then by the time we got to the second actress, even though the actress who had previously been on screen, we had the ability for her to kind of play through. So I was able to listen to her footage and know her pacing and timing and say her lines the way she had said them to the other actor who was appearing on screen. So It was actually as rehearsed as it could be without being very rehearsed.
Right on.
So I think if it hadn't worked out that way, I would have come up with either some other options for it was already really playful in the edit.
Yeah.
So I could have done a few like freeze frame things if I needed a little bit longer. You can, but I had the luxury of that working for that type of shoot anyway.
Yeah.
Or if I needed to, I know there was one scene that the timing just didn't work out. And so I had to have the split screen start a lot later than I actually wanted it to.
Oh, okay.
But I could just kind of move it in the timeline. So
yeah, that type of stuff is very tricky.
it is a little tricky, but there are ways to work around it. And I highly recommend, if you're stuck, play it for a few people that are in your target audience and see what their feedback is.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Even if it's not finished yet, just my target audience was probably mid-20s to mid-40s women.
Okay.
So I was like, cool, I'm going to find me some of those. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, my friend group fits in that pretty well.
Nice.
So I grabbed a couple of them and was like, hey, can you guys watch this for me and tell me what's really working here and what's really not?
Yeah, that's good advice. And having those friends that have probably seen some of your movies in a rough cut state already is super helpful. So if anybody out there is unfamiliar how rough a rough cut is, if you haven't done the color grading yet and you haven't done the audio, it's going to look and sound like complete garbage. And unless somebody is used to seeing a film in that state, they're going to have a hard time seeing through all of the rough spots to give you actual advice on what the edit should look like.
Because their feedback's going to be, wow, it looks really gray and dull, and boy, that doesn't sound good. And that's not the feedback that's helpful.
No, that doesn't do any good, because it's going to take you a long time to get that stuff fixed. And especially audio, you kind of want to lock the cut in before you send it off for post audio, because it makes it a mess. You can't extend shots after you've locked in audio or after you've sent it off for audio, because it turns into a giant mess.
Oh, no, you have to go back and basically go back to that entire raw shot and then edit all the audio for that entire shot and then go back and clip the parts that you want, right?
Well, I don't know if I understand what you're saying.
Oh, I guess welcome to what happens when people who shouldn't edit audio.
Oh.
If I have a moment where I'm like, yeah, this is great, I've got it cut, I've got it set, this is what I want, and then I've got the audio edited in the best way that I can do, which is not great. And then later on, it turns out, oh shoot, I actually need 5 seconds more of that clip. Mm-hmm. I have to go all the way back to that original full long clip of the entire shot.
Yeah.
And re-edit all the audio there and then drag it into my new timeline and trim it down to the new size that I need it to be.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And when it comes to audio stuff, which we will talk about in, I think, the next episode, and I can give some pointers on that, but if you send it off to someone, normally they'll have like 20 tracks. And so if you're like, I need this shot to be 1 second longer, it's not easy. And the timing to be able to fix all that audio, if you have it already kicked it out into another program, it's a nightmare. So
I didn't even think about that. You're right. Mm-hmm. When people who actually know what they're doing, it's more than one track.
Yeah, it's like 20 tracks. And so to extend it, you can cut stuff pretty easily, but it requires, which I'm going to talk about in Stockton at Table Rock, because we did do that Lower Gentry Studios with our feature film. That was one, we didn't save our project in the edit, but we did basically polish an entire feature film, sound, color grade, and we screened it for the people that paid to see it for our Indiegogo campaign. Yeah. We rented a theater and we watched it, 90 minutes long, and we're like, something is not quite right. And we sent it off to a friend of a friend who gave us some advice. And it was, okay, well, we have the scene where the mother has a heart attack while she's exercising. Yeah. And he's like, well, that needs to be more suspenseful the next day so you don't know what happens. And we're like, oh, you're correct. And what that did was it sent a cascade of edits, because we had the entire film in a certain order. And in order to like change the order of that, we had to move like one scene like out 1 minute. We had to move another scene towards the beginning. We ended up starting the movie completely differently just because we wanted to increase the suspense, which helped enormously.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that ended up watching the movie a second time, a year later, they said, "Oh, this is great. Like, there's something different about it." They don't know.
They can't pinpoint it
They're
because they didn't remember the minutia. They remembered all the beats happening, but not necessarily exactly when they did.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. And so it did help. It did help always make sure that you get advice. But it was a nightmare to be able to do that because we essentially finalized everything.
Yeah.
And then to go back, we had like 60 tracks of audio on our timeline. And so if you're unfamiliar with that, you have your main video on your timeline, which could have several layers. So if you're trying to cut a chunk out, then you have to like go all the way down 50 tracks and be very careful in the software. So you're sliding all of this information into the new spot. And so there would be random dead spots after we'd watch it, or you'd kick it out, watch it, and be like, "Oh no, we forgot to extend this little bit of audio. We missed a frame," and there's no audio, and you can hear a slight like cutout.
You just hear this little bit of silence.
Yeah. Or we had like there was a part where we duplicated some audio on accident, and yeah, it was a mess to be able to do it that way. So definitely send your film off to some friends. Hopefully, you can make some filmmaker friends and have them watch your real rough cut. And so you can take that input before you end up with a giant project that's next to impossible.
Yeah.
Feature film advice that we learned on Stockton to Table Rock at Lower Gentry Studios is that we want to make a project for each scene moving forward.
Yeah.
Because then if you have a scene project in software like Adobe and DaVinci, whatever, you can nest that so that it all looks like one piece of video and one piece of audio, and then put that on a master timeline. So we're not like cutting like little shot by shot things and trying to move it around in the software. It was a nightmare.
No, that would be horrific. Yeah.
Yeah. So organization is really important.
I think file organization is actually a really important part of editing. I think that's important to just say on its own.
Mm-hmm. Have a system in place.
It doesn't matter what it is 100%, as long as you as the editor know what it is.
Yes, yes. And going from a short film to a feature, if you have any issues with organization, they're going to become very apparent when you're dealing with, 60 to 90 minutes of film.
Would you say they would become a cutting catastrophe?
They might become a cutting catastrophe.
All right, we're going to chalk it up to the worst joke I've ever made.
Titular line of the podcast. So, have you saved a film with the edit?
I do think that The Man Who Would Not Shake Hands got a lot better when I went through and did a pretty hard re-edit on it.
Okay.
The script had a lot of flashbacks in it, and they were occurring at certain moments.
Okay.
But they would like interrupt these really powerful moments between the actors, and it almost deadened a lot of their performances. And so I think there was one flashback that ended up staying at the same spot, and I ended up cutting the flashbacks into multiple pieces. Instead of it being one long flashback, it would flash back for a quick second and then cut back to present day. And then maybe 5 seconds later, cut back really fast. And I would do 3 flashbacks for each original one flashback that existed.
Okay.
Just to kind of build some tension and some suspense, cut around anything that didn't really 100% work in the flashback. So that way we could keep it a little bit shorter and a little bit tighter.
Yeah.
And then build a little bit more tension and not take away from the actors' performances.
Right on. Yeah. When you get into the editing station, a lot of times the stuff that you think is going to play well just ends up being a slog. I think that's the biggest thing is when you watch your stuff that you put in and you imagine it, playing well, being entertaining, and it takes so many passes in editing software to make it watchable.
Yeah.
At least for a lot of our stuff. The more times you do it, the better you get at it because you can imagine like, oh, I need to put this in the script this way because I know that things are going to slog.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge thing that I see with a lot of indie filmmakers is when something is not quite right, it's like trimming the fat.
Very important.
And then they call it killing your darlings.
Killing your darlings.
I always call it murdering your babies. But
killing your darlings sounds a little better.
Infanticide.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
a big
rough.
fan of that.
That's rough.
It's
not great.
Your ideas are like your children, and sometimes they just gotta go under the knife. They gotta go under the guillotine. Have you killed any darlings in your films?
I have many, many times. And it hurts so bad because there are just these shots or these moments that I was really excited about or I loved. Usually it's a long tracking shot that I was really excited to shoot and I fell in love with. And all the moments just lined up and focus didn't drop anywhere. And it's just beautiful and amazing. And then doesn't work or it's way too long or what have you. And that was one specifically was the bodega. At a really long, very well choreographed tracking shot that I think ended up being like a 7 or 8 minute shot.
Okay.
But it was supposed to be like, I don't know, like a 12-minute movie.
Oh, gosh. Okay. So there was no room for story after you got that shot.
Nope. So in the edit, and in hindsight, this probably wasn't the best way to do it, but we didn't have it shot any other way.
Okay.
So I would say if you do end up doing something like this, it's a good time to work on your shot list and plan for coverage in a better way than just, we just need the one tracking shot. We're fine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because then we only had the one really way too long tracking shot.
Ooh.
So we dubbed over it, threw some ADR on top, and fast forwarded the whole thing.
Oh, nice.
Which maybe wasn't ideal. But again, it was a silly, kind of playful movie, and we messed with a lot of stuff. So it worked kind of stylistically.
That helps when your film doesn't have a lot of stakes. I feel like drama is really hard.
Drama editing is so much harder than comedy editing.
Yeah, because you can kind of lean into weird techniques.
Exactly.
Whereas drama, if it's off, it's off. We went to a film festival over the summer, and
Wyoming or Iowa.
Wyoming International.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was interesting seeing the difference in all very high quality productions.
Yeah.
But it was the drama block for short films was a little bit more difficult to watch than like the horror block or the comedy block.
But every single time I go to a film festival, I am going to the horror shorts block.
Yeah, those are clever.
Yeah, like I love horror films, so fair. But man, that is the most creative, half the time some of the prettiest. Like those filmmakers, they know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's so fun. They're so good.
Yeah, when it's trying to be energetic and you can get away with a lot of different things, but when it's a dramatic film, it's so difficult to get the timing correct and not come off as overly pretentious.
Well, you definitely saw that with Stockton, right?
Yeah. We nailed it though on ours.
You totally did.
Yeah.
But help getting that feedback, I will say I didn't 100% see, because I had seen the first version of Stockton and then saw it after the recuts.
Mm-hmm.
And it does flow better and it does feel better. But I am also one of those people that's like, I know things changed.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you what, but the timing just hits better. And some of those kind of suspenseful moments just build a little bit. Stockton's a really good film is basically what I'm getting at. So the minute that you have a chance to see it, you should just see it.
It should be streaming, it'll be streaming hopefully this summer, and then we're going to have a theatrical run most likely in May. So stay tuned for that one. Stay tuned for that one. So Killing Your Darlings, first feature film that my brother and I ever shot. It was a nightmare. It's called Brown Truck. You can sign up for our newsletter. It's hidden on YouTube. We only give it out to people that subscribe to our newsletter. But we had so many scenes in that ended up just going under the chopping block because we had no idea what was going on with pacing. And what we learned is that when you're an indie film, because of the fact that you don't have the ridiculous budget, you don't have the quality that you would see in something that's multiple millions of dollars, it's really important to stick to the story, and anything that's ancillary to that, just get rid of it. Try to get rid of it during the scripting phase, because those meta moments, like those on-set moments where people are laughing and having fun. Yeah, that's great when you're there, but it's like sometimes when you put it in your movie, we had these inside jokes and they just didn't land. It's like you had to be there. And it's like, well, you're showing me a movie. And if I had to be on set for this to land and be entertaining, then why am I here watching this? And I've seen it with other indie filmmakers too. Like, we're not the only ones who've made that mistake. And I'm sure a lot of you out there have done the same, where it's you're on set, you're laughing, everybody's having a good time. We're like, oh, okay, well, we will do this scene this way.
Yeah.
Let's roll. And then when you watch it, it's like, oh no, all had the giggles.
Yeah.
And it's bad. It's real bad.
It didn't play at all. Nobody knows why we're laughing at this, but boy, are we. I think if you want to see really good examples of that, watch the intro or novice or rising film or whatever category is essentially the novice category of 48-hour film festivals.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Or the 100-hour film races online or whatever else. Like, there you're going to see a bunch of people just hanging out, enjoying making a movie with their friends. Yeah. It's not going to make any sense. Yeah. It's not going to be great. But you're going to watch a bunch of people having a real good time.
Yes.
Is the good news.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, it's endearing. I mean, it's wonderful.
It's all hobby for us at this juncture anyway. I mean, to be able to make money, you got to just jump onto the human centipede and slowly leapfrog your way to the top to where you're eating real food. But
lovely imagery from Chuck.
Should we talk about editing software?
I have a bit of a rant about editing software. So
please.
I am still to this day so angry at Final Cut. And for any other Mac users, I hope they would agree with me. They went from Final Cut Studio to Final Cut X, cut out like half the features that it used to have, including like the motion graphic stuff. All their color tool was amazing. Everything was fantastic. And it was what I learned in college. It's what every college, well, at least the Boise State University at the time was using it. And it was just what I'd gotten really comfortable and really good with. And then as soon as I graduate, they're like, now introducing Final Cut X. And I was looking through it. I'm like, you mean same price, quarter the features? This is awful. This is awful. It was horrible. They put it all into one suite instead of having it be different things, kind of like how you have Premiere versus After Effects versus Audition.
Yeah.
But I didn't want one thing. I wanted all of my things. It was very upsetting. I was so angry. So I had to go back to Adobe, which I'd used in high school.
Okay.
And I still do to this day. And now I know I'm supposed to use DaVinci for color. But I'll be honest with you, I'm so frustrated and so upset at having to learn and relearn all these different nonlinear editing software systems that I don't want to learn anymore.
Yeah.
I can't, my brain isn't ready yet. I need to be ready. I will be one day, but that day is not today.
Yeah. I think the question we wrote down is, when has editing software let you down or saved your ass?
That is when it let me down.
I think editing software mostly just lets people down. I'm on so many forums on Reddit where people talk about, the DaVinci one, the Premiere one. The Premiere one's is bizarre because people, for some reason, are fans of Premiere Pro, and I don't understand it. I literally don't understand it. We almost lost our first feature film because we didn't know you're not supposed to upgrade. While you're working on a big project.
I mean, Adobe will tell you it's fine.
Yeah, they do, but everybody knows don't upgrade while you're working. And if you're working on a feature film, it took us like a year on our first one to get it all put together. And in the meantime, we couldn't get any updates. No. And features would roll out. But anyway, we accidentally updated and then it just did not open our project. And fortunately, you can roll back on Premiere, but they don't make it easy to do that. But you can go back and uninstall the new one and then reinstall a previous version. So they know it's an issue.
Well, they've started now where it'll just, if you update and you try to open an older project, it'll save it as a new project, so it won't mess with your old one now.
Okay.
And it'll convert that to the new version.
Yes, I have.
Unfortunately, that comes with some hiccups sometimes.
Yeah, it's awful. I do not like Premiere Pro. You have to use it. I was at a tech firm and that's what they gave us for doing the computer teardown videos and the printer teardown videos. Yeah. And so you get proficient at it
Yeah.
And the issue is that it just doesn't work correctly. You run into weird stuff. You have to kick things. It doesn't like MP4 files, which is a normal recording format.
It's very normal. A lot of people use it, but
it needs to be uncompressed video. If you need to kick it out into proxies, it's a nightmare.
It also really doesn't love variable frame rates.
Oh no.
So if you're, say, at a software company and recording any screen capture stuff or any webinars or any Zoom meetings or anything like that, oh yeah, that variable frame rate is going to kill you. Handbrake is what I use to solve that. Open source software, HANDBRAKE.
Got it.
And it will auto-convert everything to like steady frame rates. It works great for converting like MP4 to MOV. Free software, adorable little pina colada looking logo. Very cute.
Nice. Handbrake, open source.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Support open source developers.
That's cool. Well, that's a good tip.
Oh, I actually had something good for this too.
I like that. So you can just throw all your video assets into Handbrake and just be like, I want all of this to be at whatever frame rate.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
I dig it. And then Premiere will just find some other reason to malfunction on you.
To crash.
And, you Mac, I'm going to point at you too. You Mac users out there. I remember I was complaining about Premiere Pro and it was on Facebook, and I had all these people be like, I'd mentioned I was using Windows 11 or whatever. I just upgraded. And they're like, well, you need to get a Mac. And I'm like, no, because Premiere Pro still breaks down on Mac, right? Apple.
Having used it on both Windows and Mac, I've never used it on Linux, but have used it on Windows and Mac, and it definitely breaks down way worse on Windows.
Okay. Well, hey, I guess I'll take that.
But the fact that the answer is get different hardware as opposed to maybe the software company should focus on actually being OS agnostic or whatever. Like
it would be nice. It would be nice. But yeah, Premiere Pro is awful. You got to use it. I do like DaVinci. I tried to get into DaVinci after I started using it for color grading. However, one of the projects I did, we do a lot of multicam shoots for Lower Gentry Studios. We have a series called Treasure Valley Live, which is a music series. We do 4 cameras and bands play. And I started editing a multicam shoot in that. And for some reason, the titles, which is kind of important when you're recording a song, like you need to have the band and then the title flash up. It was flashing up fine, and then it wasn't exporting. And I still don't know to this day what the hell happened to that. And I had to basically duplicate the project and then mess with all the graphics on it to get it to kick out correctly. And I don't know what happened. So after that, I'm like, well, if I have to deal with this, it was annoying, and all the shortcuts are slightly different.
They're just different enough that it drives you a little bit crazy.
Yeah, and the audio cleanup tools are not as good on DaVinci as they are in Premiere. So basically, it's annoying that you have to use 40 different pieces of software to create your film.
That's just part of editing.
It's a nightmare. So I don't know that any time. I've never, obviously editing softwares do save your ass because it's definitely a lot easier than just slicing film and working on an old analog deck.
It really is. And it's even easier than the Avio system that I learned on, that was like right after learning on film. I moved to an Avio, which is just a giant like VCR-sized box with its own mouse. And it was a computer just for editing. And it was cool, but it was slow.
Yeah.
And it was frustrating.
Yeah. For the most part, Premiere works great. It does. It's the last 10 years it has improved.
They finally updated their user interface for the first time since, the 70s? I don't know if Adobe was around in the 70s. But that was nice. I thought that was very nice. When it happened, I was completely shook to my core, though. I was not expecting that. It has looked the same for so long.
Oh, yeah.
That to see it suddenly look different was uncomfortable.
I used Cool Edit Pro in the mid-90s and late 90s for audio. And that's what Audition is, Adobe's Audition.
Oh, they just bought that?
They bought Cool Edit Pro late 90s, early 2000s for their audio editing, and it has not changed a bit. Because I used it in high school, and then when we got into editing films on Premiere Pro, kick the audio out and then edit it on Audition. I'm like, oh, this is the same thing. I'm like, this hasn't changed in 15 years. Nope. They just bought it, kept the same interface for the most part. The waveform and the multi-track, it was all in the same spot. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, it was convenient.
Nice.
It was convenient, but yeah, it's still save your projects.
Always
Definitely save your projects so much.
Every so often, it's just Command S. I'm on a Mac, so Command S.
Control S.
Just throw it out there with your little.
And I save my project every day as a new project.
That is something I started doing since you told me about that too. Actually, I really like that because I used to I'll keep it in the same project, but save it as like a new. I would duplicate my sequence.
Yeah.
And rename the new sequence and then go from there.
Okay.
But I think your idea is much, much better. I still do the drafting on the sequences in case I want to go back to another sequence.
Yeah.
But yeah, just saving it as a new project file.
Because I've lost project files on Premiere, and the auto save kind of worked, but I've lost like 2 hours worth of work. And when that happens, it makes me very concerned that I might lose an actual project, in which case it's all gone. So it's like I can at least save a day if I every day, save it as a new date on whatever project you're working on until it's over. And that way, like, you can roll back to the previous day without an issue.
Yeah.
And then I throw all those project files on the cloud.
Oh,
so that
smart.
I can pull the project file down.
Yeah.
And then it references, as long as I have the footage or the audio or whatever on the drive, at least it should just pick it all up.
It usually does. It does a good job of realigning footage.
We're going for a while. Should we talk about good and bad edits in famous films?
Yeah, sure. What do you got for us for favorite good or bad edits?
I have Star Wars for both. I don't know if you're familiar with the lore of Star Wars, but the very first Star Wars film, the rough cut, I guess, was a disaster. And so George Lucas, and there's debate online how much his crew had to do with this, his editing crew, including his wife, Marcia. Apparently, there's a video online that says that like the crew, the editing gurus, and mostly Marcia Lucas went through and changed the entire movie. But then there's people saying online that no, it was George Lucas's idea. Doesn't matter. So it was a slog. It was initially they followed Luke Skywalker and the robots. I might be, wrong on some of this stuff. It was a while ago that I watched the movie.
In other words,
the internet video.
Don't quote him.
Yeah, but basically he took the movie and then made it more succinct, and the idea that it follows R2-D2 and C3PO.
C3PO. We got there.
Yeah. That the movie was from the robot's perspective was something that happened after they had already made a cut of the film.
Oh.
And so they had to chop a lot of stuff on there chop a lot of things out of there because it was just so boring to watch, I guess. It was a slog.
Oh, and for such a good movie, that's a shame that it was like, this is boring.
Mm-hmm. They fixed it though.
Well, good. Obviously. It's a well done film.
Yeah. What do you got?
I have something, I think it's from, I should have put down the year, 2022, Unseen. It's actually directed by Yoko Okumura.
Okay.
And it is the best editing I've ever seen. And if you did not pick up that What's the Worst That Could Happen, my short was very similarly based on this, where a lot of this is happening over phone call, but the two places look like they align.
Oh.
You see both characters walking in certain shots, and they do a lot of the side-by-side stuff. The editing on it is just fabulous. The editing was Michael Block. I had to look that one up because I did not know. And I do not know if that's an individual or an individual representing an agency or what have you. But Michael Block knocked Unseen out of the park so hard on that edit. Obviously, the director deserves a lot of credit too. Fair. It was a really good movie. But that editing was just beautiful. It was mind-blowing how well timed everything was. It was beautiful. So,
I haven't seen Unseen.
Huh. It's really, really good.
I'll have to see it.
It's really good.
I'll add it to the list. And then you got a bad example of editing?
I don't. I had another example of good, actually, because I was so mean to Marvel movies before that I needed to appease.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I do think the best editing of any Marvel movie was Captain America, the First Avenger.
Okay.
They did such a good job of keeping it so modern and well-toned for all the present day stuff, but actually had older looking camera techniques and styles for the stuff that was in the past in like, the 40s. And then they kept all these comic booky transitions and the big, what are those onomatopoeias where you see pow and bang and all those words come up like a comic book. It was so cute. It was a little campy. It was a little silly, but it's Captain America. It's supposed to be.
Right on. I don't watch Marvel movies really.
That's okay. You don't have to. Nobody's going to make you.
I should, because they're a cultural phenomenon.
They are that. They are that. And I don't know. I like comics.
It's just too many to get caught up on at this juncture. I mean,
I'm behind.
Yeah.
No.
I'm just watching a show when someone's like, "Have you seen the show?" I'm like, "Oh, how many seasons is it?" Like, 5. I don't have time for this.
Who has that many hours? Not us. Not most of our listeners, right? Because we're taking up all their time now.
Yes.
With this episode.
Absolutely.
Specifically.
We should probably just have a succinct sign off.
I think that works.
Bye.
Bye.